she's staring at.
V.I.P. released in 2001 for the Game Boy Color, courtesy of Ubisoft and Planet Interactive, and based on the Pamela Anderson-helmed television show of the same name, involving a protection agency of some kind that ran from 1998 to 2001. And this is a franchise that I'm somewhat familiar with, not because of the show, mind you, though I have seen some of it. You can find some episodes on YouTube. I would not recommend it to anybody, but because we've already sampled the other two games based on this show. There was the appalling PlayStation QuickTime/crappy minigame version, and there was also the somewhat competent but otherwise mediocre Game Boy Advance release exclusive to Europe that will come out a year after this game's release. And some bozo in the comments, whose name I won't mention because I quite frankly forgot, I'm sorry about that, but presumed that the Game Boy Color version would be next since it's the only one left, and yeah, hi, cutting in from the future here. So, a buddy of mine had a copy of this game that he was more than happy to lend me for the purposes of this video, and in one of those moments that I wish I had a camera on me to commit the moment to video, my beloved, dearly departed dog Sasha was asleep in her usual corner on my couch, and I was waving the card in her face. So she lifted her head up, she sniffed the card for a bit, then she jumped off the couch, ran out of the room, and looked for a piece of furniture to pee on. So even she wanted nothing to do with this game, or this series for that matter. I miss that dog. I really do. But yeah, here we are for better or worse. V.I.P. for the Game Boy Color. Let's get this over with so I never have to touch this series ever again. I'm hoping a fool's hope, aren't I? Now, V.I.P. on the Color is one of those games that have these really awful-looking talking heads that I'm almost convinced were recycled for the later GBA release. I mean, the likenesses are accurate somewhat, but good lord, these look bad. But setting that aside, this is one of those licensed titles that adopts a variety of playstyles as opposed to just the one, and you've got quite the bounty here, let me tell you. Overhead driving game, side-scrolling skating game, side-scrolling action game, overhead run and gun, and vertical scrolling shooter. Yes, a vertical shmup based on a Pamela Anderson television project. Who would have guessed that one? But I guess we should break down each style, right? So much like the other V.I.P. games, each stage has you playing as a different character depending on the situation. It doesn't seem to matter because each character is just a skin for your piece on the digital board of guarded variety game styles. And look, I'll give the game a slight hint of credit. The game modes are competently done. I mean, they're not great. I'd be hard-pressed to call some of these good, but they're not broken or terrible or anything like that. Mostly boring. But let's blow through these fairly quickly, I hope. Upon starting a new game, V.I.P. opens with a cutscene detailing the overall premise of the game. A notable actor has gone missing, and our V.I.P. production agency has to find said actor or whoever, it really doesn't matter. Anyway, the first stage is a driving stage. You drive upwards, avoiding obstacles, collecting things to refill fuel to keep going, or health to resist damage from things, though running into oil slicks or whatever they're called, or getting pulled over by cops will cost you a life. Fortunately, there are plenty of extra lives for you to pick up if you know they're coming. Anyway, there's not much to this. Cars control fairly poorly, they're a bit of a weight to move around. Collision detection is a bit of a joke. You can bump into cars and kill them without getting harmed, but run into them head on will hurt you, so try and remember that. So this is a thing for 4 of the game's 14 stages. Then we move on to a side-scrolling skating stage where you have to avoid tripping on banana peels or steps and smashing into walls and other things to maintain momentum as well as not get hurt. Think of this as a poor woman's California games and you'll be fine. Unless you don't care for California games, in which case, well, it won't last long and there's only 2 such stages. Thank fuck for that, because you take a fall and it takes you an eternity to get back up, and, well, controls aren't all that great here either. Next up, we have an overhead run and gun. You move upwards, you shoot the occasional enemy that pops up once every 5 years, and you make your way to the end of the level. If you shoot while moving left or right, you'll fire upwards in a 45-degree angle in the direction you're moving towards, which is certainly a choice in playstyle. You have a limited number of grenades that you could only toss straight up that do something, I guess. Explosion isn't all that great. I know this is based on a low-budget TV show, but still, Game Boy can do big explosions. Contra, for fuck's sake. All in all, this isn't so bad, but it's also somewhat brain dead. You're never overwhelmed by bad guys. Hell, you're hardly even whelmed by bad guys at any point. Most of the time you're just moving upwards and you could easily sidestep the bad guys without so much as a look. And of course, collision detections are kinda sad actually. And there's only 2 such stages of this style of play, which is something. Then we get a speedboat segment, which is just a driving segment but with a boat instead of a car. Same deal pretty much. But then we get to the chopper. And we have a vertical scrolling shooter. It's nothing special. You shoot things with your guns and air-to-ground rockets, which you can delay the drop by holding the B button. You collect occasional power-ups to upgrade your firepower. And again, it's practically brain dead and slow, not much opposition to deal with. And there's only 2 such stages in the game, one of which is the final level that also features air balloons that actually shoot back for something resembling challenge, which is something, I guess. And finally, we have the familiar side-scrolling action platformer. Only took us 6 stages to get here, but here we are. All these stages have you playing as Valerie Irons, the Pamela Anderson portrayed character. You're armed with a pistol and limited ammo that you have to seek out. Most enemies die in one hit, fortunately. You could grab onto certain platforms to pull yourself up, and you're mostly fighting rogue cops, robots, snakes, and other critters. If this stuff were in the actual show, it'd be much more... would have lasted more than 4 seasons, but I digress. 4 of these stages are of this type, and for what it's worth, control is more than functional. You could grab onto ledges, your jumps aren't too bad. There's a neat transition from room to room where the screen sort of stretches, and yeah, it plays well enough. Valerie has an idle animation of sorts, so it's not all that bad, I guess. I suppose. Something. Trying to be nice here. Yeah, so 5 distinct playstyles make up this V.I.P game, and I'll give it credit, it's better than the PlayStation version in that there's actual gameplay and not whatever this is. And again, the 5 playstyles are competently executed, though that's probably being kind. The levels themselves are fairly basic, some are brain dead easy, others are boring, extra lives are very easy to obtain because the game keeps giving them to you, collision detection is a bit of a joke, and that's really where some of the issues may pop up. Particularly the driving segments where you've got things that can kill you in one hit, and yeah, I don't know. V.I.P has a sort of sporadic difficulty curve in that most of the levels are a cakewalk, while sometimes there'll be little things that make things seem challenging because they couldn't be bothered. It also makes me appreciate the GBA version of V.I.P that will come along later, which is only slightly better than this, but not by much. You earn a password every few levels cleared, and there's also an option called YubiKey, which is a connectivity feature of some sort where if you connect with another Game Boy Color Ubisoft game with such a feature, you're supposed to unlock stuff or something. That's what I've read on, at least. I don't know what this is. I looked up whatever I can. It doesn't tell me much, and I just ignore it. And you probably should too, so... V.I.P is a pleasant enough looking game, I guess. It's bright and colorful, the scenery is nice and varied, the characters are somewhat smallish and distinguishable, as are the vehicles and such. The creepy mugshots in between levels are accurate likenesses of the actors, but they look creepy and such, and graphically, V.I.P looks fine. That's all I can really say. Sound's another story. It's generic C64 sounding generic stock music with mediocre sound effects. Not much else to say there, quite honestly. Overall, V.I.P for the Game Boy Color, not much to say here, quite frankly. This is a decidedly bland collection of playstyles that are competent at best and sleep-inducing at worst. For what it's worth, this is better than the PS1 game, and I use that term game extremely loosely, but that's not exactly high praise. I mean, look, if you're one of the 3 people on this planet who have nostalgia for this show when it was a thing and you need a video game to complement that V.I.P fandom for whatever reason, the Game Boy Advance version is probably the way to go. This isn't bad per se, but it's also the usual licensed stodge that is played for a bit and quickly forgotten about later. You're really not missing out on much by giving this a pass, so yeah. Actually, I may be underselling things a bit here, because V.I.P, I feel, has what I believe to be the single greatest video game ending in all of video game endings to end all video game endings. Behold. Now, I don't know about you folks, but this is a masterpiece. This is how you close out a game. I'm going to bed. Good night.